Here's what he says to those who believe on him. If you continue. Does that remind you of anything we've read this morning? Didn't James say, whoever looks and continueth therein? Jesus here saying the same thing. Now, why am I emphasizing that to you? Because when I see the word continueth in James and continue here, that tells me there's going to be a process of time. Does it not? Doesn't that tell you that? He says continue means there's going to be a span of time involved. If you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed, or in reality. Verse 32. And what happens when we continue in His word? Then you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Or, could I say it this way? When you continue in His word, when we continue in His word, then we'll find out what's really true. See, when He says, you continue in my word, you'll know the truth. I'd like to say it this way. You'll find out what really is true. Now, the reason I say it that way is, just looking at your natural life, just looking at the circumstances of your life, just looking at your past, looking at things going on around you, you might not be seeing something that's really true. You might be seeing a temporary reality that's changeable and changing, you see. You might be seeing something that is not necessarily true. We've got to look on the inside. We've got to look at the mirror of God's Word to tell us what's really true. And what did Paul say? If we look and keep on looking, he said we're transformed into that same thing we're looking at. If you continue in my word, then you're my disciples indeed. You'll find out what's really true. And then when you find out what's really true, you'll be free. Free from what? Free from whatever you were looking at before that wasn't really true. Is that okay? I remember the first time I ever went to BJCC, the prison here. Now we have a Sunday night service. And the Promise Keepers arranged a meeting. This has been many years ago, and I remember this was the very first time. Bill Rule, who worked in the kitchen then, arranged for us to go there, and we used to go and meet in different churches once every 2 weeks, and every week we'd say, whose church wants it next week? And I always like to have it here because they give me an opportunity to buy the best cookies I could. See, the Promise Keeper is all about men getting together and eating a bunch of cookies. Anyway, one week nobody volunteered. And so Bill Rule said, I know, let's go to BJCC. I'm in charge of the kitchen. We can meet there and invite some of the trainees to come. So we thought, that's a good idea. We did that. So we went out to BJCC, and it was about half and half. We had about, 6 to 10 Promise Keepers. And, maybe more like 8. And let's just say 8 trainees. I don't remember how many. So we're sitting around this big table, all the men from the town, the Promise Keepers over here, and all the men from the prison, the trainees over here. And so whoever was in charge, I forget now, said, well, let's all introduce ourselves and then we'll talk. And so we started with the men of the Promise Keepers and started around the table. And the first man said, I'm so-and-so, and then he told what his occupation was. I'm so-and-so, let's just say I work at a bank. I'm so-and-so, I'm a farmer. I'm so-and-so, I drive a truck. And so that's kind of how people introduce themselves, right? They tell their name and then what's significant about themselves. A little marker, identifier, so you can identify who I am. Get that? Who I am? And so then we got around to the trainees, and the first man said, I'm so-and-so, and I'm here because of, and he mentioned his crime. Drug violation, or assault, something like that. And then each one of them, they said, I'm so-and-so, and these are the charges against me. And I thought to myself, that's how they see themselves. That's how they identify themselves. That's who they think they are, you see. And even though if we were introducing ourselves to somebody, we probably wouldn't say things like that about all the bad things. Yet I think sometimes in our minds, we identify ourselves in some ways that are not really necessarily true in the light of what God says about us. So here's what I'm saying. If we're going to be transformed into what He wants us to be transformed into, we've got to look at what He says about us. Not what we feel about ourselves based on past successes or mistakes. We've got to forget about the natural mirror and look into the spiritual. Does this make sense? So if you would, for just a moment, let me show you some things that God says about you. Let me hold the mirror up to you, and this is going to reveal to you the way God says you are. Now, what are we supposed to do with that, by the way? We're supposed to not be forgetful here, believe that what He says is true, and act like it's, wow, if He says so, it must be true. Let's start off with 2 Corinthians 5:17. That's where I started. Let's go there again. Let's just look at what he says here in the light of what he's saying about us. 2 Corinthians 5:17. If any man be in Christ, that means if any person be in union with Christ, here's what it says. He is a new creation, a new creature. First thing I can say, looking in God's mirror, is He's created in me something new. Now, when He says a creature or creation, the margin says creation. King James says creature. What that's saying is the Creator has created in me something that's not what I made, but something He made. He created something in me. I am, by virtue of my union with Christ, brand new and a creation of God on the inside. That's who I am. Now, what else can I say? Old things have passed away. You know what most people think is, now I'm a Christian, I need to start working on those old things. Try to get rid of them. Here's the way you work on it. He says they have... Did I read it right? I'm not changing that, am I? Old things are passed away. Are is present tense. They are passed away. Well, I don't feel like it. It didn't seem like it. Well, you're looking at the wrong thing. You need to look at what He says. If you want to be transformed into that same image by the Spirit of the Lord, biggest mistake I think we make is trying to do ourselves what only He can do. He says they are passed away. What are we supposed to do with that? Well, I think what we're supposed to do with it is just grab it and believe it, even if it doesn't feel like it. Is that all right? Even if it doesn't seem like it. It takes a little bit of, what's the word, spiritual bulldog and determination sometimes just to say, I don't care what I feel like. He says it, so it must be true. Old things have... We sang it this morning, didn't we? I had y'all singing it. It's tricky, isn't it, how we sing in these songs, these truths. Old things have passed away. Behold, everything's become new. Well, He says it is, so it must be true. Well, let's look at some more things He says about us. Ephesians. I got a couple in Ephesians here. Chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4. Look at this one now. Oh, verse 21. I like that. I never know where to start. Verse 21. If so be that you've heard Him and been taught by Him as the truth is in Jesus. Right away He says, remember what Jesus said, if you continue in my word, you'll find out what's really true. Paul here says the truth that we find out, and by the way, and I think what he means here, the truth about you, because of what he says next. The truth about you is found in Jesus. The truth about you is found in your relationship with Him. Verse 22. Here's what's true. And he tells it by way of an instruction. That you put off concerning your former conversation, that means manner of life. Put off your former manner of life, the old man, which is corrupt according to deceitful lusts. Verse 23. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind. What does that mean? Adopt a new way of thinking. Think differently. Verse 24. And that you put on, where? In your mind, in your way of thinking, that you put on the new man. You see, the only way that you can put on the new man, put off the old man, is right up here, in changing the way you think. That's the only way you can do it. You can't put it on like a piece of clothes. That'd be easy, wouldn't it? Just go to the closet and, I'm going to put on the new man this morning, come to church. Wear him once a week. No, that'd be easy. What's a little more challenging is to put it on up here and keep it on. You see, when we look into His Word and continue therein, it changes the way we think about ourselves. That's what Paul says. Well, what is it we're supposed to put on in our way of thinking about ourselves? Put on the new man, that's the new you, by virtue of your union with Christ. Listen to this. Which after God. Now, when it says after, that word after doesn't mean later in chronological time, but it means like. Like God. First thing He says about you is because He's created in you something that He created, it's like God. God-like. In the beginning, when God made man, Adam and Eve, and He said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Did He say that? Did He say, let us make them in our image and in our likeness? See, in this new creation, He has recreated in us His image and His likeness. That's what the mirror should be revealing to you. You're God-like on the inside. You have His nature. Created in righteousness. Well, somebody would say, oh, I'm trying to be righteous. No, He says you are created in righteousness. It is who you are. See, it's a lot easier, actually, to be who you believe you are than to try to be something that you think you're not. Did I say that right? To be who you... Well, anyway, you get the idea. Created in righteousness and true holiness. When I read that word true holiness, what that implies to me is there might be an artificial one. Yes, indeed, there is an artificial one. which is all external and for show. But what he says here is, you're like God on the inside, God-like. And you have been created in righteousness and true holiness. Well, how's all that going to show up on the outside? Well, all he wants us to do is look at it. Just look and keep on looking.